Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. If you're the kind of person who just loves geeking out over the mechanics behind truly incredible food, well, you are in the exact right place. Today, we're unpacking a masterclass in authentic, MSG-free Thai cooking. We're going to break down the specific techniques used to create Zap Kha Moo, which, if you're not familiar, is this beautifully complex, spicy pork knuckle soup. But listen, we aren't just reading off a recipe today. We're looking at the actual professional pillars of flavor building. We're going to see exactly how to get that melt-in-your-mouth tender pork, how to properly extract maximum aroma from fresh herbs, and how to nail that famously vibrant pro-level Thai seasoning balance. So let's dive right in. Have you ever actually wondered what the real secret is to a perfectly balanced, melt-in-your-mouth Thai spicy soup? Like, why does it taste so wildly different, so much more vibrant in a great restaurant compared to when we just kind of rush through it at home? Well, the source material we're digging into today makes it super clear. It is absolutely not about shortcuts or magical secret ingredients. It is entirely about technique. It's knowing exactly when and exactly how to treat each ingredient to unlock its full potential. To really grasp this, we're going to walk through the 5 pillars of flavor that take this dish from just a basic, everyday soup to a completely professional culinary experience. All right, pillar 1, the foundation. Our foundation here is the pork knuckle, and honestly, getting this part right, completely non-negotiable. Notice the highly specific order of operations here, which is designed to guarantee a perfectly tender bite. First up, you have to add salt to your boiling water before you even think about adding the pork. This is a super crucial cause and effect step. By salting early, the seasoning actually penetrates the meat as it cooks, so the pork itself is deeply flavorful rather than just floating around in a salty broth. Once the pork is in and it comes back to a boil, you're going to see fat and impurities rise to the top. You've got to diligently skim that scum off. That's what keeps the broth clean and clear. Then the real magic happens. Lower the heat, cover the pot, and let it simmer for a good hour to an hour and a half. Covering it is key because it traps the moisture so your broth doesn't just evaporate away, while that low, slow heat gently breaks down all those tough connective tissues, and so the pork literally just melts in your mouth. Moving on to pillar 2, the aromatic bouquet. Once your foundation is simmering away and getting beautifully tender, we shift gears to the aromatic bouquet. Now, Thai cuisine is legendary for its fragrance, right? But you don't get that iconic smell just by tossing whole vegetables into hot water. The big takeaway here is that physical preparation dictates flavor extraction. For example, you don't just chop the lemongrass, you have to bruise it first to actually shatter the fibrous cells and then slice it diagonally for maximum surface area. The shallots, don't just dice them, they need to be actively crushed, like smashed open to forcefully release those pungent sweet aromas. And the kaffir lime leaves are fascinating. You don't leave them whole. You fold them and physically tear out that tough center stem. That tearing action literally ruptures the essential oil glands inside the leaf. Every single physical action here is a deliberate, calculated step to coax out the natural oils before they ever touch the broth. And this approach to ingredients brilliantly illustrates how professional chefs build complex, bold seasoning, especially when it comes to heat. We aren't just relying on one type of spice. We're using a dual chili approach. On one hand, you take fresh ginger chilies and pound them. Pounding them releases this raw, immediate, really aggressive spicy kick. But to balance that out, we take dried chilies and gently roast them in just a little bit of oil over medium heat until they get crispy and incredibly fragrant. That builds a smoky, deep, resonant kind of heat. So when you combine the raw punch of the fresh chilies with the roasted depth of the dried ones, you create this amazing 3D spice profile that is an absolute hallmark of authentic Tom Sap. Next up, pillar 3, the broth extraction. Okay, so our pork is tender, our aromatic bouquet is perfectly prepped, and now we marry that rich meat foundation with our vibrant herbs. But here is where so many home cooks make a fatal error. They boil the herbs for way too long. The source highlights a very strict, precise timing metric, exactly 5 minutes. You crank the heat up to medium, drop in your bruised lemongrass, your sliced galangal, crushed shallots, torn lime leaves, and you let them boil in that pork broth for no more than 5 minutes. Why so specific? Because if you boil these delicate fresh herbs for 20 or 30 minutes, all their bright, volatile essential oils just evaporate right out of the pot, and the flavor of your soup becomes super muddy and bitter. 5 minutes is the absolute sweet spot to infuse the broth with brilliant aroma while keeping all the flavors distinct and fresh. Okay, pillar 4, the pro seasoning balance. Once that 5-minute timer rings, we reach the climax of the whole cooking process. This is where we basically act like flavor chemists, balancing those complex sour, salty, and sweet notes. Think about this two-layered approach to acidity. This is a total game changer. We don't just rely on lime juice for everything. First, while the soup is still simmering, we add tamarind paste. Tamarind gives this mellow, earthy, really deep sourness that actually needs to be cooked into the broth. It gives the soup this incredible body and well-rounded savory depth. But then, we bring in the fresh lime juice. Lime provides a bright, sharp, acidic punch, but its flavor is incredibly fragile. If you boil lime juice, it turns terribly bitter, so the lime must only be squeezed in completely off the heat, right at the very end, or even directly into your bowl as you serve it. Let's talk about how this all comes together to create that perfect balance. We just went over that brilliant layered sourness. Now for the sweetness. Notice that the primary source here is actually just the natural sweetness you extracted from simmering that pork bone broth for an hour and a half. You can totally add a pinch of sugar if you want, but honestly, a really good broth provides its own rich sweetness. Now pay close attention to the salty profile. You're gonna add fish sauce here for that unmistakable umami punch, but, and this is a big but, you absolutely must factor in the salt you added to the water way back in step 1. Always, always taste your broth first before you just blindly pour in the fish sauce. Otherwise, you risk totally ruining that delicate balance we've worked so hard for. And finally, Pillar 5, the final aromatic touch. We are in the home stretch now, and it's a fast-paced, high-heat finishing sequence. The goal here is to literally shock the soft vegetables and herbs into releasing their maximum fragrance right before the soup hits the table. I absolutely love this quote from our source material. If we put the tomatoes in at the very beginning, they will turn to mush. I mean, it sounds so obvious, right? But it's such a vital reminder about ingredient timing. Things like tomatoes, our pounded fresh chilies, and those beautifully roasted dry chilies are completely held back until now. We only add them at the very end, turning the heat up to a rolling boil. The tomatoes get just enough heat to soften slightly and release their juices, but they don't disintegrate and cloud up our clear broth. And right at that exact moment, when the broth is at a crazy, rapid rolling boil, you toss in your soft herbs, the sliced cilantro, fresh cilantro, and a big, generous handful of holy basil. The pro technique here is to submerge them into the boiling liquid for literally just a few seconds, and then boom, immediately turn off the heat. This rapid temperature shock wilts them just enough to instantly release all their vibrant, peppery, citrusy aromas into the air without overcooking them into dark, tasteless mush. I promise you, the smell in your kitchen at this exact second will be absolutely incredible. Which brings us to our final and maybe most important tasting note. As you're squeezing in that fresh lime juice off the heat, just remember that authentic Thai cooking really isn't about rigid robotic measurements. It's about empowering your own palate. The absolute perfect Zap Kha Moo is simply the one that tastes perfect to you. Use these professional techniques as your structural foundation, but then, take ownership of it. Taste the broth. Does it need a sharper punch of lime? Maybe a deeper splash of umami from the fish sauce? Or, hey, maybe a few more of those crushed roasted chilies for extra smoky heat. Adjust that sour, salty, spicy, and sweet balance until it absolutely sings for you. By breaking down these 5 pillars, starting from the slow, foundational simmer of the tender pork stew, through the hyper-specific physical prep of the aromatic bouquet, that strict 5-minute broth extraction, the layered seasoning balance, all the way to that final high-heat aromatic shock, you haven't just learned a soup recipe today. You've basically unlocked the architectural secrets of Thai flavor building. So I'll leave you with this thought. Now that you've got these professional techniques under your belt and you understand exactly how to manipulate heat, timing, and extraction, what authentic dish are you going to conquer next? Thanks so much for hanging out with me on this explainer, and happy cooking.